Welcome to the Solemn YuGiOh channel where we discuss everything collecting and investing in Yu-Gi-Oh! So today we are assessing card quality. What grades can you expect to get out of specific cards when sending them into PSA and BGS? So this will be slightly more technical, maybe a bit more boring to some. However, it is one of the biggest questions I get. People go like, oh, can I send pictures of my cards and let me know which grades they'll get? And firstly, I can't tell you that because grading is subjective, so it's more like a range. And secondly, from pictures, I can't judge shit. It's very possible that your picture is hiding an issue. Maybe it's not lit correctly. I would need 20,000 angles, and so I quite simply can't answer that question. However, I hope that this video will give you enough details essentially to weapon you, and this way you can grade them yourself, somewhat at least, so you know what's worth grading and what's not. So here we have a variety of raw cards and also some graded cards, and we will essentially be going over a few details, and that way you can figure everything out. So first, you need to understand the subgrades by which the two biggest grading companies generally grade. BGS will give you subgrades. There will be 4 numbers: centering, edges, corners, and surface, whereas PSA just won't tell you. But by and large, they tend to follow somewhat the same guidelines, though both companies do focus on some things slightly differently. However, let's not get too deep into that either. So to get into centering, I will show you what an off-center card looks like. Now, a lot of people don't realize what centering actually looks like at first. They think almost anything is well centered when it's really not. So have a look at this Mystical Space Typhoon. If you don't see that this is off center, I have news for you, because it is very clearly left to right and also top to bottom. So if you can see, the top row, let's say the black here, is much thinner here than on the bottom. Beyond that, left to right, the right side is much thicker than the left side, and this will cost you grades. Now, it's not as heavy in PSA as in BGS, you know. Some could argue that BGS is quite random when it comes to centering sometimes, but regardless, centering is a factor. It is very rare that this type of centering would get you a PSA 10. So while the card itself may be very clean, I would actually have to check, and we'll do that very soon, the centering by itself probably already ruins our chances. So if you are sending things in hoping for only 10s, you should already check that centering very well. So usually it's a left to right or top to bottom issue. Some of the most notorious sets with bad centering are Legacy of Darkness or the early tournament packs, and a variety of other ones. I believe Labyrinth of Nightmare also has that issue. But you know, it can be found in any set. It's just that some are more notorious for the issue than others. So right here, we have this MRL Mystical Space Typhoon, and this is off-center by quite a lot, and so our chances in 10s are very low. Do note that a certain level of being off-center is still okay by PSA standards. So your card doesn't have to be exactly symmetrical perfectly, and they do have those guidelines posted on the PSA side, but I can tell you this is too off. So now that we've talked about centering, let's talk about the next one, and that would be edges. Now, edgeware is, I want to say, the most common issue in grading, and some people don't even realize that their cards have it, and so they're like, why did this get an 8? Well, very often that is why. So edges is basically the easiest thing to damage on a Yu-Gi-Oh card, I want to say, because, well, that's essentially the thing that you bang into objects. That's the thing you bang into a sleeve. That's basically the thing that has the most contact, I want to say, with rougher objects to a point where it gets damaged. It's also extra flimsy. So the edges are essentially the sides, and while on this card they are quite clean, it would be hard to find, I believe, anything really wrong with these edges. Let's go into a card where the edges are a problem. So we have this Barrel Dragon right here. As you can see, the centering on this Barrel Dragon is better than on the Mystical Space Typhoon. Left to right is more even. Top to bottom is more even, but still not perfect. But left to right is definitely better than on the Mystical Space Typhoon. So you think, okay, we have a better shot. We'll get to surface soon, but I believe this surface is relatively clean. But we'll get to that later. Now, we are going after edgeware. Note how the back surface is actually not clean at all, but the front was fine. Let's focus on these edges right here. I don't know if you noticed that. At the top of this card, you have whitening across the whole top. I don't know if you can see that, depending on the light. You have to really do your best to see it, but it's there. This will knock down your grade. And I see this all the time. People send me their card and they go, oh, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And instantly I notice there's a spot of white, there's a spot of white, there's a spot of white. That is never, ever, ever grading well. Now, of course, sometimes such a card can pass through. That's what people would call a weak 10 or a weak 9 and so forth. But you shouldn't assume that you're going to get the outlier grade. So as you can see here, this edge has issues. It has what's known as edge wear. That will knock down your grade. And you may think, oh, this is subtle, but a company will see this. This is not a perfect card. Now, do note, you don't need perfection for a 10. It is possible that you find a 10, even when it's not an outlier, that has the slightest little cluck, and that's okay. But here, it's much more than just one thing. This entire edge has spots like this. I hope you can see this. Again, this is very, very specific stuff. Now, once you have checked out your centering and your edges, there's another thing you want to check, and that is corners. As you may realize, these are the corners, just the points, and those two can have whitening. Of course, these are the weakest points of a card because they are essentially two edges coming together, and so they are the smallest piece of the card that can really bump into stuff. So not only can you have weak corners where you can kind of like, you don't want to press it in, but you know that if you pressed it, it would be flimsier than the rest of the card. That's a weakened corner. But it can also have whitening. And a really good example of that would be this very same barrel dragon. So if we get to this corner right here, as you can see, this corner on the, well, it's actually the bottom left, but now the way I'm holding it, it's the top right. So as you can see, this corner right here, it has whitening. And so that is instantly docking points as well. This is also way more obvious than the whitening we had on the other edge. And so you already know this is docking points. So if you have cards like this where you think easy 10, yeah, forget about it. I do not think this is going to get more than a 7. This might like pass as near mint because the front of the card is relatively clean, though I would have to recheck. But this will never grade very well because you have your top edges that are bad, you have your corners that are bad, you have your back surface that is bad. There's a lot of bad about it. Even though, again, in a sleeve, this card might look fine. And I get pictures like this all the time. People just send me straight cards in a sleeve and think I can grade it that way. Like, no, you need to check these kinds of details. So now you know what edge wear looks like, and you know what corner wear looks like, and you know what centering looks like. So now we go to surface. Now surface can be a variety of things. There is so much that can be wrong with surface. First of all, the easiest one is actual dings or binder dings or dents. This is the kind of actual damage that the card was bent or slightly pushed too hard onto something and you can just see relief in the card. So the way you check for this is by holding it to a light source like this and just going over it. So as you can see, we go over a light source and we look for any unevenness. Now I don't really see any binder dings or binder dents. The front is pretty clean, I want to say. I don't see immediate scratches. Now I do need to say I'm a bit further away from the card because the camera is in the way, but where most of the damage is usually found is on the back. So if we go to the back of the card, there we go, boom, a bunch of scratches. Now again, you don't see it in all lights. So sometimes I'll get a photo of someone and they show me a picture of the back, go like, I can't even help you there. Once again, depending on the light, this back may look fine or it may look awful. And so you need to have multiple light sources. So if I don't know if you can see that, but I definitely see it. There is a bunch of scratches in all directions. And that kind of stuff is just instantly docking points. So you may have the perfect edges, the perfect corners, the perfect everything. But if you have legitimate just scratches or a white dot, or there's even more issues you can have, you know, like for example, ultimate rares, they have this pressing in relief into the card, so you have this embossing. Now that press can happen so harshly, especially on European print, that it seeps through the card. And so in the factory, you would have created this square here and maybe some more embossing, and that would also dock points because your surface is no longer perfect. A lot of these vertical scratches are actually scratches that even the factory can do, and that too is damage, and that too will dock points. Later in this video, we will actually be going over some different PSA graded cards where you can really start seeing the difference. This is basically awful. I am getting this graded because I would like to have it in a slab, and the front looks gorgeous. Like, honestly, front, and once you put it in a slab, I could not see something wrong. You know, sure, centering ever so slightly, but from the front, this card is a beauty. Now, I do have to say there's a slightest bit of pressure here on the side, but I don't know if you can see that. But again, like, you just look at it as a card, beautiful card. Someone without the experience would go, wow, easy 10. But again, then you get into the back, you get into all the details, and you notice, wow, what a gorgeous 7. Maybe lower, and that is that. So I'll quickly put it in the sleeve, and we go over a few more cards, because I really want to drive the point home. I hope that people basically can watch this video and never ask me the question again. Or at least if they ask a question, I can send the video and they go, oh, okay, thanks. And that's that, because honestly, that is the most time-consuming question to answer. We've gone over the MST centering. Let's go through this Paladin of White. So this is the Paladin of White that we also used to show you how to clean a card, because this card had some issues. I'm still waiting for some chemicals to clean this even better. That's why it hasn't been sent off. We have our Paladin of White right here. So once again, we go with a little technique, and you can see some pressure here. I don't think it's bad enough to a point where it matters. However, when we get to the back, edges and corners are clean. There is one weak corner right here, actually a good example. I don't know if you can see that, but this corner is weakened. There's some pressure pushed onto this. This corner is weakened, but then you get into the surface and you just notice all of the issues. There is factory scratches, there is regular human scratches all over the place, horizontal, left to right. Yeah, this is not something, generally again, I don't think this will grade very well because all of those scratches are just awful. Once again, corners, edges look fine. Surface on the front looks quite clean. You know, you have your beautiful foiling, your rainbow foil. You think, wow, what an amazing card. I'm getting this free 10 right here. And no, you really, really don't, because your back is all messed up. And so yeah, if your cards look worse than the Barrel Dragon, which again from the front looks like a great card, I would not bother grading unless you want it in a slab. Like, I am often sending in some cards that I just want in a slab. They're going in personal collection, they're not going to move, and that's okay. But if you are looking from this like, oh, I'm going to make stonks, you better have some very, very, very good looking cards. Now, next up, I actually have a card that is very clean. Now, this Hungry Burger, again, was sent to me by a viewer, and I still appreciate that very much. I love this card. It's not a stonks card, it's just I want it in a slab as protection. If you look at it, let's see. Can you see what the issue is with this card? It is the centering. Left to right. The right side is a bit thicker than the left side. Top to bottom is quite clean, but left to right is an issue. Now, beyond that, this card is close to flawless. Again, we can go over the surface. Notice how clean that card is. There is no issue whatsoever. No corner, no edge, no nothing. This card is clean. Corners, edges, everything is clean. There is really no issue. Now, you can sometimes notice these horizontal lines that are actually just the way older cardboard looks, you know. It's just those ripples running through the card, but they aren't scratches, and they are very discernibly different. Except for the centering, this is a 10 contender. So I just quickly wanted to show you what a 10 actually looks like compared to what many may think it looks like. But again, that centering may knock it down, but they also somewhat accept worse centering sometimes. Like, I have a Revival Gem that's a 10, but the centering isn't the greatest. Now we have our actually graded cards that we can go over. So we start with our LOB Blue Eyes with his disgusting broken neck, foil shifted, original 2002, and it's a PSA 8. You can notice original print, by the way, in many ways, but the easiest way is the text right here. The little dot lines up and so forth. So if you look at this card's front, once again, we are looking at an extremely clean card, and many people don't realize how clean an 8 can really be. They're like, wow, an 8, that sucks. But no, look at this card. It's a very, very clean card. Now, if you notice any scratches, it's mostly on the case, but this card is very clean on the front. And now people think, I have a card, my dog chewed on it, but it's probably still getting an 8. Like, probably not. However, we go to the back once again to find the real issue. Now here on the top, actually, top right, you still have some whitening on the corner. That definitely didn't help, but it's very, very subtle. And sometimes that can also just be of how the machine cut. But where the real issue lied in this card, we go to the back. Now, once again, there's no real harsh surface scratches on this back. There is another reason this card got an 8. Now, once again, you look, it's pretty clean, right? Like, what could possibly be the issue with this card? Well, it is the edge wear on the sides horizontally. I don't know if you can catch that, but there is whitening across the whole border. I don't know if you see that, but this whole border has ever so slight whitening, and you know, over such a large surface on this side, and then also on the other side, over this whole border. And again, someone from afar can say like, oh, what a beautiful card, easy 10. Well, nope, it's an 8. It's a cool ass 8. So now we have a look at the weaker 9. Very pretty card. Left arm of the Forbidden One, first edition LOB. Again, quite nice. Here in the top left, there's an ever so slight whitening. More so factory cut than like after the fact. But where the real damage lies, and what makes this a weak 9 in my opinion, is right here. I don't know if you see that, but there's some whitening on this edge. Now, some might argue that's not a weak 9, that's just a 9. That's very possible. But once again, though, from afar, wow, what a pretty card. But not necessarily a 10. Now we go to a clean 9. I believe the only thing that made this a 9 is the centering. And even there, that's really, really gorgeous. So we look at this 9, a MRD first edition Change of Heart. Just gorgeous card, right? Like, there's no weird whitening. There's no oddities whatsoever, just a clean card. The back, if you go to the back, no odd whitening either. Just a beauty. Like, honestly, nothing wrong. As you can see, that left side is thinner than that right side. But apart from that, this card is a beauty. And then we get to a 10, right? This is a 10. Injection Fairy Lily first edition, PSA 10. Now, notice how this centering isn't even perfect. Now, for LOD, requirements, this centering is perfect, but you know, it's still not actually perfect, but it is within the range that PSA deems acceptable, and a normal human being will normally not pick up the centering issue here. It is extremely subtle. And again, if you look at the edges or the corners, there's just nothing you can find. This card is clean like a baby's butt. Now, of course, you can see some scuffing, but that's on the case. And if you don't believe me, too bad. You get absolutely nothing out of being a skeptic. So, as you can see, edges, corners, surface is a bit harder to see once it's slabbed, but surface even you can check under different angles that are just too hard on camera. Literally just perfection. This is a 10. This is what a 10 is supposed to look like. And that is extremely different to me from our LOB 8 right here. However, if you don't know these differences, you might think these are the same quality. And again, once you get into the nitty-gritty with those specifics, you really start to notice those differences. Sadly, I do not have 4s and 3s. I don't think that's really useful anyway, but I am planning on getting some 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, 5s and 6s, because that might be interesting to look at regardless. But I hope this was still useful for you. This way you can kind of see the difference of what's an 8, what's a 9, what's a 10. We also went over some raw cards. Be sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.